And welcome to an exciting. Well, that's new. The music didn't line. That's the first time the music didn't line up with the intro. Okay. So, with that fun start, let me introduce myself. I'm Michael, host of Writing Through the Unknown, and I want to thank you all for joining us on this adventure into the unknown, the esoterics. And so, I have two guests with us tonight. One guest you may recognize as she's been on the show before, and that is Angie Dollar. So, welcome back to the show, Angie.
Thank you.
And so, for those who missed the first episode, what's a little short synopsis of what you do?
Oh, I do quantum healing hypnosis, QHHT. So that's Dolores Cannon's method. And someone, Tim Goldman, also created quantum healing, EQH, to do the method online, do a similar method, which essentially I feel like it's the same. And then I also will do SRT Energy Clearings.
Very cool. And in full transparency, our original guest had to reschedule due to a prior commitment issue. And so Angie was kind enough to come on and suggested I bring on, and I hope I pronounced his name correct, Jim Girouard.
Right.
Wow. Whew. That was good. So, Jim, welcome to the show.
Yeah, it's a real honor to be on, and I'd like to thank you, Mike, and thank you, Angie, for inviting me.
Yes, you're welcome. And as I was reading your bio, and it's in the description, but you can, if you wouldn't mind, give a little bit of your background and what it is that you do.
Well, around 2009, I was starting to become familiar with a book called the Bible Code. And there was a guy who put every 50th letter together, and it spelled Torah. So he realized that there was a pattern of letters in the Bible which were written in code. So when they invented computers, they were able to decode thousands of letters, and they were getting answers and they were getting predictions. So then there was this other group that was trying to debunk the Bible code, and they were saying that they were going to, run the book Moby Dick into a computer code, and they were going to get the same results, which they did, and they got results. They got answers and they got predictions. But my take on it was that they didn't prove the Bible code was a hoax. They proved that if you had thousands of letters, you could get answers and predictions. So I thought, well, how can I get the letters? So I went to a flea market and I said, do you have Scrabble? He said, no, I have Boggle. I said, what's Boggle? And he pulled out this box, and it was a game that had 16 dice with letters on it. So I thought, wow, this is like seventh heaven for me. Because I've been using 5 regular dice, throwing them 20 times, and decoding the numbers into letters, which was very time consuming. So now I had 16 dice with letters on them. I'd throw them 8 or 9 times, get 100 letters or so, and I had myself a system. So for about 3 years, I kept throwing the dice and asking questions, but the questions weren't very good. They were just basically stupid. Am I going to meet the girl? Am I going to win on the scratch ticket? Stuff like that. So the reading would say something like, he wants to know if he's going to meet the girl, or he wants to know if he's going to win on the scratch ticket. But it wasn't telling me anything, so I already knew that. So after about 3 years, I started asking the question, what do I need to know next? That's when things opened up. That's when the spectrum got really, really wide. And then I started getting all kinds of insights. So then I looked up Dr. Patrick Flanagan and watched some of his earlier videos. And I did a reading for him and I sent it to him. And the reading said, horse goes over the cliff. So I didn't know what that meant. So I sent it to him. And 3 days later, he called me on Skype and he said, I woke up this morning and I realized that I have a friend named Alex who went over a cliff in a Porsche.
Oh, wow.
While he was in the car going over the cliff, there was an Indian saint by the name of Sai Baba who appeared in the car and embraced him. And the car was totally demolished, and he walked away without a scratch. So I said to Dr. Flanagan on Skype, I said, I've been wanting to go to Sedona for the longest time. He said, come on down. I'll set up a free lecture for you at the Chocolatree Eatery on Route 89 in Sedona. So he made up a bunch of flyers. I went to Sedona, and 7 weeks before I went there, I did a reading and I asked the question, who am I going to meet during this lecture? And I got the name Christy. So during the lecture, I kind of stood out in the middle of the crowd and I said, is Christy here? She was sitting right in front of me, waving her hand. She says, I'm Christy. So I said, well, I came here from Massachusetts to meet you. So I gave her the dice. I had this great big white piece of cardboard and a black magic marker, and I had her throw the dice. And we got the words Aries, adopted, dragon, and Zorro. And she said, my sign is Aries. I was born in the year of the dragon, and I was adopted. I said, what does Zorro mean? She said, my husband dressed up as Zorro at a party.
Oh, wow. That's beyond coincidence. That's not random.
Yeah, so I turned around and I showed the cardboard, with the letters on to the crowd and everything. And it was really magical, man. It was like an explosion of interest. People wanted to know more about it and stuff. And at the time, we had to leave, so I didn't get a chance to interact very much with the people there. But that was sort of like what put me on the map.
Yeah, I could see why, because you couldn't argue that because the words are there and you have no idea what they mean, and for them to all land for her, that you just can't explain that away. That's like proof in a nutshell right there.
Yes. So just today, I sent a reading to Angie, and it was about Nostradamus because I watched a video by Dolores Cannon, and she was saying that Nostradamus was coming through these hypnosis sessions, and that the first person that got a message from Nostradamus, she got so freaked out she went to Alaska. But then what happened was Nostradamus kept coming through. And one of the things that Nostradamus told Dolores Cannon was that he was not a disembodied spirit, that he was still alive in France, and he was communicating with her from that incarnation.
So I'm curious with something I want to share, and we were talking about backstage was we used the word divination and saying, you know, the dice, throw in the letters, that's divination. And I was realizing you were pointing out saying, you know, you're calling these letters to you and creating it. And like the game Yahtzee, where you're calling out numbers and when they land, that's divination. So I wanted to take a moment to help people understand that there are times when we think we're playing a game when we're really are opening doors and doing stuff with the other side.
Yeah,
And so that is something to be cautious about and explore. I don't want to freak people out and make them say, oh, I don't ever want to do that again. Just be aware of what you're doing, is what I'm asking.
yeah. I mean, Campbell's soup. I mean, everybody knows what Campbell's soup is. I mean, you must have had Campbell's soup when you were a kid, right?
Right.
Okay, everybody knows what Campbell's soup. Well, Campbell's Soup Company 50 years ago created a dice game. So now, for 50 years, people have been buying these dice and they're throwing the dice. And what happens is they think of a word and then throw the dice, and then the letters spell out the word that they were thinking. But they don't realize it's divination. They think it's a game. So for millions of people for 50 years have been doing divination, but didn't know it because they just think it's a game.
Right. And that in transparency led us to start talking about the Ouija board. And we were discussing that the Ouija board itself is not the dark entity or darkness that we all talk about why you shouldn't do a Ouija board and mess with it. It's the individuals who are inviting spirits into their home and not taking responsibility to exit the spirits that they bring in. They don't realize they're really opening a door and inviting real things in. They think it's a game and ha 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 moving a thing around when chances are there may be a real spirit coming through.
That's right. And it's mostly teenagers who are just looking for thrills, because they're bored or looking for something to do or whatever. And they don't take any precautions because, I mean, what kind of knowledge do they have about the spirit world?
Right, and it kind of begs the question to me, what was the gaming industry thinking allowing this as a game, and also the creators of the game to think this is a great game to sell to anybody and to promote as just a game and not warn people about what's coming. And I wonder if even the creators knew what they were doing.
Yeah, if I put like a product on the market, dice method game, let's say, if I put it out there as a game, people would buy it. But if I put it out there as divination, they wouldn't be interested.
Right. And so, yeah. And Angie, you're being a little quiet over there.
Yeah, there's so much to it. I mean, I feel like one problem is they're just opening the door to whatever coming in. And as far as the Ouija board, I feel like another problem is they haven't cleared themselves and cleared their space and asked for protection and work to connect with the highest part. They're just like, hey, I'm opening the door to whatever. But I also wonder, I mean, even besides the Ouija board, I feel like there's some people out there in the spiritual community who will follow whatever guidance that comes to them. And I'm not talking about the Ouija board. They're just like, I know my guides are around me, helping me and, taking me in the right direction. And then they've got all kinds of chaos and all kinds of problems. So I just think it's important overall to think about, what are you following? What are you listening to? What are you asking to come in and assist you, So.
Right. And I think another important thing, too, is that, like Jim was saying, is be aware of what questions you're asking, because questions can easily be interpreted different ways. And so be very cautious and clear in what you're asking. Would you agree, Jim?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
so,
also he talked about low-level questions. So he also talked about low-level questions, like asking, when am I going to win on the scratch off? When am I going to get that guy or that girl? And I think part of it, if you're really seeking some spiritual enlightenment and growing spiritually, you may want to look for some more deep questions than just the earthly things. So.
right. And in a weird way, it kind of sounds like it also is to think of questions for humanity's sake, not just your own personal agenda, because we all need to help the world that we're in and not be selfish and think only of ourselves. But with that being said, that is a double edged sword, because we have to take care of ourselves to help others.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I want to tell you another aspect of this reading that I sent to Angie earlier today. I didn't know who you were when I did the reading. So when she wrote to me and told me about this program, I took the reading back out and I decoded it a second time, and it said, Angie's friend, Mike Newcoff, interviews me.
Oh, wow.
And I knew nothing about you. But your first and last name was spelled out in the letters.
I will admit I'm getting chills now, because I remember you sending me a message and saying, do you ever go by Mike? Or do your friends call you Mike? And I said, yes, some friends call me Mike or Michael. And I was interpreting it as you were thinking, okay, so on the show, is it okay to call me Mike? Or do I want to be called Michael? And I had no idea this was attached to a reading. So
Yeah,
that
in the
just,
reading it was spelled out Mike.
I got chills. And as well, Angie was like saying to me before we started, going, you should try and get a reading from Jim. And I was like, I just sat down to eat, and I'm looking at the time going, oh, I don't think there's going to be time for a reading before the show starts, unfortunately. And finding out one was done.
Yeah, usually what I do is I ask people to send me two photos, one of each palm. And I do a palm reading first. And from the palm reading, I get a lot of references from that. And then when I do the dice reading, it just gives me a whole lot more to work with.
And it's interesting too that how it works out, because I was talking to Angie and a couple others and saying, I'd like to get a group on because I normally only have one person. And I was like, hey, I was getting a feeling of a group, 3 people. And she didn't know this and comes up to me and and just writes me and says, hey, I have a friend named Jim who I think you should have on. He was on Robert's show, Typical Skeptic.
Yeah.
And I was like, before she even told me you were on Robert's show, I was like, hey, if Angie's saying I should talk to you, I'm sold. I want to get you on the show. And I was like, I was pumped because I'm like, okay, Angie doesn't normally recommend people to me. So I was like, what's this going to be about? And I got to say, Angie's got really good taste in bringing people on.
But Angie has a very powerful auric field. And maybe it's my ability to tune in. Maybe that's part of it. But maybe it's a combination of the two. And I do readings like almost every day. And just about all those readings has a message for her. That's very unusual.
It's interesting you say that because I had a guest on Tuesday night. Her name is Olga, and she did an Akashic reading for me. And one of the big things that she was telling me as well is she enjoys doing the readings because as she's helping others, she's also helping herself. And to me, I feel like that's one of the things that I like. I like to listen for is because that to me says this person's genuine and authentic, because that's a sign of enlightenment and awakening, not just, I'm doing the readings to make ends meet, and I'll tell you what you need to hear, so you'll keep coming back and I can keep paying my rent.
Right. That's why I try to avoid the whole money thing because, I don't want somebody sending me $50 and then I start telling them what they want to hear because they're sending me money. But they do send me donations.
Right. And well, that's really nice that they do that. And I feel like the equal exchange is a good policy. And the exchange is, we always think of it in terms of saying money for services. But in the beginning of time, it was exchange of energy for services, an equal
Yeah,
exchange of energy.
yeah. See, the whole thing with the dice method is when I decode the letters, it might have a person's name in there in the reading, which means that the message is for that person. So, I'm not going to write to them and say, send me $50 and I'll send you the reading. I already know that the reading is for that person because the name registers in the letters. And that's one of the reasons why I try to keep the money thing out of it because the whole process is really spontaneous.
That's a good way to look at it. And I'm curious because Angie's been helping me with discovering my past in programs and stuff that's been hidden from me. And so I'm wondering, is that something that you delve into as well, or have you stumbled into that by chance?
Yes, you can combine the dice method with the hypnosis.
Oh, okay.
Well, the reading, Jim, the reading I did for Michael was where I was just connecting with his energy. I wasn't hypnotizing him. I was just connecting with his energy and giving him a reading, like a psychic reading. And thank you both for the compliments, Michael and Jim, before we move too far away from that. But and it was interesting doing a reading for Michael because I was telling Jim about this. I moved back to Sedona and I just had one obstacle after another finding a place to live. But then when I sat down to do a reading for Michael yesterday, I was feeling so good. You know, it's kind of like the lady who did the reading for you, Mike, that you were saying, like she enjoyed doing it. She felt good, like she was helping. And I was enjoying it so much, I thought, I got to stop. I'm getting tired. I feel like I've been doing this a long time, you know. But it was just wonderful to go into those visions and go into things in these other realities or other, you know, dimensions, other places. It felt really good, you know, to do it. So I think it's pretty fulfilling for both people when you feel like that, when you're in that state and you enjoy being in that state, you know.
And I gotta say, Angie, I'm impressed you kept your sanity getting into my psyche. Even I don't go into my psyche.
Yeah. So, you know, maybe not all the lights in the parking lot are lit.
No, I'm finding they're probably a quarter lit because I'm learning stuff about me I had no idea about, and all that I have done and where I come from. And when I say where I come from, I mean I know I come from my parents, but I'm talking on a soul level. And to hear that information starts to paint a picture of, okay, that makes sense. And a funny thing with Angie is because we were talking a little bit afterwards, and in the reading, she was saying stuff like, well, I don't know why I'm equating this to TV or movies. I don't normally do this. And I told her, when I'm talking to people and I'm trying to explain something that I feel is way out there, I go, let me put it in terms of a TV show or a movie I've seen so it makes it relatable. And she was like, aha. And she would make comment like, your left eye, you know, is more enhanced than the other. And I was telling her, you know, it's interesting because my left eye will twitch and feel off sometimes more than the right eye.
Oh, and I didn't know why you sent me that message. I thought, why is he sending me that? But now that you say that, it's because I said you were a cyborg in a reality and it was your left eye, and I'm feeling it on that left side. Because see, when I'm in that state doing those readings, it's like I'm in a trance and I come out of it. I don't remember everything I've said. I just send you the audio recording. I'm talking into the audio and I just send it. And I don't generally listen to it again. You know, it's your stuff. And so you said that. I thought, why is he telling me his left eye twitches? What does that have to do with anything? You know, but it's because you're cyborg, you had that implant in your eye that I kept calling it robotic is what's coming to me. And I mean, we know there's like computer mechanical stuff about robotic. So.
And so I'm wondering, Jim, with that kind of information, has that ever come up with your dice stuff like that?
There's a magical name that comes up for you after a certain amount of readings. It might be in the first or second reading, or it might be in the 20th reading. A magical name is like a sentence that describes your true magical nature.
So I'm curious, and I know Angie does this through psychic, and Jim, you say you look at pictures of palms. do you ever ask for a picture of the person, or do you stick with just the palms and everything comes from the palms only?
Having a photo of the person's face helps, but it's mostly the photo of the palms and their birthday. If I know their astrological sign, that helps quite a bit, but it's not really necessary to see a picture of their face, but I prefer that because, I want to know what the person looks like that I'm doing a reading for.
All right, I was just curious because I'm always curious how some people can connect and read people in other ways, because like with Reiki, I can visualize like the energy that I feel is coming from the person, and it generates an image. It may not be the exact replica of the person, but it's like their spirit, so I feel like that's them. And so that's why I always like to ask, because it's interesting how everyone can connect to each other and read, and can either get permission to read or can be blocked from reading. And it's interesting to me too is when you're blocked, how, what do you do about that?
I think the first step is to see it and acknowledge it. And then from there, you sort of figure out on your own, I think, how to deal with that because in some of the episodes I was watching Dr. Phil, it really surprised me that the way he went about, dealing with these people was he would say to them, here's your problem, now you fix it. That really stunned me because I thought, um, you know, he's the psychiatrist. He's going to give them the answer, but he didn't give them the answer. He just told them to fix it.
Yeah, and I'm curious too if, like, I know Angie does secret space program readings for people to help them figure out their involvement in the programs if they were in the programs, which thank you for doing that, Angie. I'm wondering if there's topics like that where you, Jim, sit there and go, well, nobody's asked me about this, but I'm curious about this. Let's see what the dice have to say.
Yes.
What kind of topics are those? Do you mind sharing some?
Well, like I was explaining before, um, there's all these thoughts that you have, like in your subconscious mind. Okay. So like right now we're talking, and I'm thinking about what you're saying and what we're talking about, and all these things are sort of registering in my subconscious. So when I throw the dice, I'll say, what do I need to know next? And all those subconscious thought forms will manifest in the reading. And it'll show me some answers to questions that I have, or maybe predictions, or maybe it'll acknowledge like what you're talking about right now.
Yeah, and I would think like with Michael, maybe it would be if we had to put a question in words, is like, well, what is the purpose of all of this? Like, what is the purpose of like the reading that I did? What's the purpose of my reading? Like Jim could get with the dice method. What's the purpose of the secret space programs and the going in as like a white hat trying to help out? Like what is my purpose in this life? What's that my connection with all that, those realities with this life? Just something. I don't know, Jim, what do you think?
I was wondering if I could get into the subject of telepathy.
Go right ahead. That's what this show's all about, is getting into the unknown.
Okay, like I was explaining before, like when you're holding the dice in your hands, the energy from your body and your auric field goes into the dice. And then you throw them. As the dice are tumbling through the air. This is what I was explaining to you in the bio, the write-up, about this vision that I saw when I was 19 years old, was changing letters on top of the building. And the changing letters is the portal to the Akashic Records that are in the astral heaven. And the messages from the Akashic Records come into human awareness through the changing letters. So when you throw the dice and the dice are tumbling through the air, there's your changing letters. Okay? So now that the dice land on the table, you write down the letters and the words, and you send them to me in an email, and I decode the letters and send you the reading. And when I decode the letters and I look at the reading, a message from your subconscious mind enters my subconscious. Okay? And then I send it back to you, and you read it, and a message from your subconscious re-enters back into your subconscious mind. See what I'm saying? So now we're communicating telepathically.
That's really interesting because that puts a whole nother twist onto it. That you think, okay, he has the picture, so he's looking at this person and seeing this person in their mind and getting the answers. You don't think about, like you're saying, yes, my mind is communicating to your mind and then communicating back and having this conversation, because that's something that nobody ever brings up. Nobody ever, in all my metaphysics training, has ever said, when you do energy work, your spirit is talking to another spirit while you're doing this.
Yeah, it's never been done before.
So is this something that you stumbled on Jim doing and was got interested in, or was it something that you feel was a calling and that's what brought you to it, the awareness of it?
Like I said, for the first 3 years, I'm just like any other ordinary American person, asking all stupid questions about what I want in life and not getting any answers. And as soon as I started saying, what do I need to know next? All of these things started happening, amazing things. I started seeing people's real, natural, magical qualities. And even though I was seeing it, I couldn't make them realize or understand that I understood their true magical nature, because they didn't understand it themselves. But I could see it. I could see it in everybody that I met. It was a whole different type of appreciation of other people, because now I could see their real nature, because now I'm observing my consciousness by using this method, because I'm looking at the letters and I'm thinking, these words I'm getting in the reading come from my subconscious. How did they get there? How did they manifest from my subconscious onto the table in these letters? And once I realize what it says, it re-enters back into my subconscious, and it creates like a loop. It's like revving an engine. You step on the gas, the engine goes fast. You step on it some more, it goes faster. It goes faster, it gets hotter. It's like revving an engine. And the more you do this dice method, the more you're observing your nature, your consciousness, your awareness, the way that you see things. You're looking at that, and you're seeing it manifest in the letters. So, how is that happening?
Right. And it brings to mind, I've seen on Facebook, these pictures that people put up, and it's a whole bunch of letters, and they say, oh, what's the first 3 words that you see is what you're going to be bringing into the year, or what you're dealing with. And I always find it funny because it's like I can see like 10 words right off the bat, and I'm like, which one do I want to pick as the 3? But I've never thought about my mind is projecting into the screen, looking at all these letters to say, these are the words you need to look for.
Yeah, I think that, there's a big difference between, I think what most people do is they sort of project thoughts and feelings. And a lot of that, a lot of times is like anxiety or dislike or whatever. And they're projecting that, okay? But then there's another way of going about it, which is to just radiate. And when you radiate, there's no anxiety or hatred or dislike or anything like that. You're just sort of radiating feeling, a good feeling. You're radiating. So the better of the two is to radiate and not be projecting, like opinions about what other people do, what they like, and that turns into like insults and condescending and on and on and on and on. Most of the communication, I think, is projections of these ideas and opinions, but there's very little of this sort of just radiating who you are, which is more peaceful and it's non-judgmental.
Right. And I was talking with April Joy yesterday, and one of the things that we were talking about is, when you have something on your mind, you always go to like, someone like Angie and you, for example, saying, this is what's wrong. What do I need to do? And she was pointing out that people also come to her saying, this is what's going great. How can I make it even better? And I was like, and I loved that she pointed that out and said, you don't have to be in a bad space to come to me to get help. You can be in a good space and want to be in a better space and just keep getting better. And that's one of the things that I was noticing with you is there is no good or bad, space that you're in. It's a question. You're leaving the perception and emotions out of it. It seems like, and just it's a question. Here's the answer. Done. There's no, oh well, the emotions, I can see are driving you to this or that. It's like you figured out a way to alleviate that.
Yeah, it's a good point. The other thing I wanted to bring up about the way the dice method works is it's not a thinking process at all. So what you're doing is you're sort of bypassing the thinking mind. And all of these thoughts from your subconscious, including, memories of past lives, they start coming through. And when you bypass the thinking mind, they register in the letters and you get the message because your thinking mind is like a mind controlled computer robot that tells you, don't pay attention to all that stuff. Get back on the treadmill and go to work and pay taxes and be normal. Whatever that is, whatever normal is.
Do we even have a normal anymore?
I don't know. I don't even know if you can define it.
We used to be able to, but no, I don't think we could define it today. But I'm also curious, Angie, when you do the readings that you do, I hear I listen and I'm hearing everything you're going through. And like I was saying with Jim's is I could feel a detachment of things, but yours, I could hear every once in a while you saying, oh, I had this come up and this. So I'm like, in my mind, I'm sitting here like going, how do you keep yourself out of the readings, and because some people may interpret that as, oh, she's formulating now through her viewpoint and perception what's coming in versus what may actually be coming in. And I mean, personally, I know you're not doing that, but I'm just saying that's it can sound like that, and so I'm curious your thoughts around that.
I think this is maybe the way to look at it, is that my first training was in energy clearing with spiritual response therapy, the SRT. And before we do any kind of clearing, we have to get ourselves into a clear, neutral, connected state. So I start by getting myself into this slight trance state where I'm neutral. And so when I do that same kind of thing when I'm doing these readings. And so when I was doing a reading for you, part of what I was seeing for you is you were in Antarctica. And, I'll say a little bit about your reading because you said, it was okay for us to bring it up. We're going to discuss some of it. But I did, for myself, I had already done maybe 7 hours of channeling in Antarctica. I had done maybe just an hour or two with James Rink, but I did about 5 hours with a friend of mine of channeling for myself. And so when I saw you there, I think maybe that was one of the times where in your reading I said, oh, I was there too, So it's like I'm looking, and it's as if I'm looking at it as a movie is happening, and I'm seeing you and I'm seeing me. And then there were some times where I was seeing you and I was seeing Alex Collier, which I think you had said was a friend of your dad's or something when your dad was alive. And I'm seeing all these different scenes, and it's like when I'm looking at it from the standpoint of a reading, it's like I'm not really looking at it. It's as if my high self is recording all this. And then there's moments where I come down to being more human and I'm like, oh, wait, there I am. So I'm looking at it in different states of myself, where I'm just recording it. And then it's like, whoa, there I am. I'm like coming down to the human state as if I'm a little child, like, yay, a carnival, it's like, yay, there I am. And there we are together. And it's just kind of cool. Or like, whoa, there's Alex Collier. And so I'm coming down to being fascinated, going into more of a human state, and then I go back up to that state where I'm looking around for you, if that makes sense, So.
It does, and I'm glad that, for those who may be thinking about getting a reading from you is hearing that that's how you do it, because, yeah, it really brings into the perspective of you're not saying, okay, this is my reading, and I'm going to fill in the gap here. It's you just happen to see yourself there, and so it's like, yeah, you're going to acknowledge yourself. That's just a human thing to do, is to be like, oh, hey, I'm there. And
right.
I'm guilty.
Or I'll say, oh, I've seen something similar with someone else, but it's different. And I think part of that is that if I'm doing an SSP reading and I'm doing a reading where you've helped to save a world or something. Like I was saying earlier, I can't remember everything I said to you because I'm just in that state. I'm just reporting it. But I think what's important to note right now is a lot of us are recognizing each other. So we're recognizing like, hey, I know you from SSP. I know you from other lifetimes. I know you from other realities. So it's like, whoa, look, there we are. There's you and me. Or I may see, like I've seen Christy out there, who you mentioned to me, Christy Campbell. I've seen us together. I've seen James Rink with me and some other people. So it's like, oh, wow, there's us as, a group. There's people that I recognize there, and I recognize them here as well. And it's kind of like an aha, like, oh, wow, this is cool. I think finding each other and going out there and talking about these realities and these situations is helping to wake other people up. And, you know, the first time it was back last February, so it's coming up a year now. I've only known about these secret space programs, these kind of things, Montauk, MK Ultra, all that. I've only known about it for a little less than a year. And when I found out about it, I was in a group with Evie Lordgren. I know I'm saying her name wrong. And there was a woman in the group that was really triggering memories with me. And she even told me in email, she said I was saying stuff to try to trigger your memories. And I thought, I think she recognizes me from the programs. So I feel like reporting on this stuff and maybe saying things like, oh, yeah, I was there too, is helping people to wake up and bring in their memories and start to make sense of all this. So.
And also another aspect of that too is if I have questions about it, you know, I'm like, okay, like, you know, if I wanted to know more about what's going on in Antarctica, it's not like I could go look up, you know, somebody on Facebook and go, okay, you know, tell me what you experienced in Antarctica. And so it's nice to hear, oh, you were there too. So if I'm confused about something, I can say, hey, what do you remember? And maybe that'll help unlock memories.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, and I mean, I'm seeing a vision of it right now. Black fabric with holes and just helping to fill in is where you made a little memory, like you messaged me today and you said, okay, some of this is making sense towards something as a child or something like that, some sort of little memories you had that were kind of making more sense after you listened to what I sent to you.
Right. And one of the things too is it's like you sitting there and I've hear all these stories and I've been like, I don't have those memories. I don't have those bad image memories all the time. And I know I was splintered. I know I went through this or that, but it's like I don't have the full recall memory of that. And sometimes I'll sit there and be like, well, that seems weird to me. You know, was I like an observer to the program and not really truly in the program? And then in the reading today, you were saying stuff like, well, you were put through, but you were in for this reason and that reason. And so you were flipping on what was going on. And I was like, that may explain why my memories of the program are different because of my reasons of why I was there. And so it may have altered my perception. And that's what, and it's like, it kind of, for me, was a little reassuring to go, it's okay now that my memories may be different of these projects versus everybody else because I wasn't in like everybody else. That I was there, I was a part of, but I wasn't fully in. If that makes sense.
But also you having different memories, I think makes it to where you're not potentially just following what other people say. And I heard Penny Bradley talk about that because I thought, and I think you've interviewed her on your show.
Right, I have.
I heard her, I was thinking, gosh, I'm talking about all this Antarctica stuff. I haven't heard anybody else say anything about Antarctica. And sometimes I'll purposely not listen to a lot of what other people say because I want it to come from me. But I'm surprised at how I'm not hearing some of the things that I've said about Antarctica. And I heard Penny Bradley say that she can tell someone's authentic when they're saying things that no one else has said. So she knows they're not just going listening to other people's shows and picking it up. So maybe there are some people who do have very similar memories to people who are talking on these shows, and that's all they have, and that's fine. I'm not saying they're making it up, but I was happy to hear her say, hey, you know, this is shows some authentic thing when you're saying something different. So, and I think that was true for you with your reading, as I was getting some different things. But I was also trying to search for some positive things, because I feel like with a lot of people, I'm saying, oh, here's all this terrible stuff. Like, I saw you as an assassin in SSP, but I didn't dwell on that. I was looking for what are some positive things that have truly happened that I can pull into this to give to you, to just bring in some sense of being empowered and feeling like, hey, I have been out there trying to help. Because one of the things was seeing you up on a spaceship where you were monitoring, helping Earth and helping some other places. So.
Right. And I think that's important too, is, you know, especially when you're dealing with such a high emotional topic, is, you know, we can easily get grounded and be affected by saying, yeah, like you're saying, you know, you were an assassin. You were, you know, operating in this area, doing this here, this there. And you could easily start psychologically going, oh my God, I'm this secretly this dark person. But one of the things that helps is to also go, but you also did this, this, and this, which was helping. And so it's like, okay, there's a balance. And so I'm not all bad. I'm not all good. I'm just me. And there's a little comfort in knowing, yeah. And that was one of the things that I was talking with Akim Wood, was we were talking about all the dark and everything, but I said, yeah, but we did peace treaties too. And he goes, yeah, there were times that we would do that. And I was like, so it's not all bad. And so it's like I was trying to, like you were saying, is to leave people with hope that there is light and there is good that comes from this as well.
Yeah, and I think that if we look at the programs, I mean, a lot of people look at past lives and they'll say we played different roles. So sometimes we're the bad guy and sometimes we're the good guy. But if you look at these SSP programs, and whatever you want to call it overall, Montauk, MK Ultra, SSP, whatever, all that super soldier, I think in those programs we've got some pretty limited consciousness generally. So, and we're being controlled generally, and we're being mind controlled and mind wiped, and so we're not really in our right mind where we're in control of our decisions usually. So I don't think you can say, okay, I've been the bad guy in that situation. It's like we've been controlled and manipulated and had our human side shut down and been, even if we're in an organic body, which sometimes you're in the cyborg body as well, but even if we're in an organic body or a clone body that seems to be human, we're part of our consciousness is so shut down where we don't have empathy or sympathy, and we just go off and we're an assassin or something, you know, negative, because that's what we're connected to. We're not really connected to our human side where we have compassion and we care about people and animals and that kind of thing. Whereas when I saw you like on the spaceship, you had a higher level of consciousness and you had a higher level of awareness than you have even here on Earth, and you're trying to help. So you're just in a very different space, you know, when you're up there trying to help people, as opposed to being like on an SSP type of situation.
Right. And one of the things that I was talking with somebody about with it too is when we think about, you know, we're operating in the SSP, that, you know, beneficial and non-beneficial races are using us to perform tasks or missions or whatever. I was like, you know, I'm sure these races see us, remember us, and that we have generated allies and enemies alike. And so the allies will come to help us if we need. And that is something that I feel like, too, is a benefit of the programs that people overlook is we're out there and we are making allies on a spiritual level as well as with the programs.
Yeah, I think so. I think so too. And we've probably done that over and over, and we've been out there for a couple thousand years. I'm not just talking about the SSP, just overall other lifetimes, other levels of its existence, you know. So
Right, because
if we want
we actually don't, we don't know how long these programs have been running. They could have been running in the Middle Ages, and we have no idea.
Right.
So we have come to the hour, and I want to thank both of you guys for coming on, especially in such short notice. I greatly appreciate it. And Angie, as always, you are welcome on anytime. You are a true friend, and I thank you so much for everything. And Jim, I hope you have become a friend as well and will come on the show as many times as you'd like.
Yeah, there were some things I wanted to cover, but there's only a certain amount of time.
Well, is it one of them a short one, and I can give you a little bit of time to cover?
No, I think the next time we do this, we could probably spend an entire hour just talking about the telepathic idea.
Well, then I will be in touch with you and will definitely set up a date for that. I am looking forward to that because telepathy is a topic that I have a lot of interest in.
Well, for me, this is sort of like a dream come true. I've been looking around for some other channel to be interviewed on, and this one turned out to be the one.
Well, I'm grateful to hear that, and that touches me here because that's one of my goals with all my guests, as Angie knows, is I like everyone to feel comfortable and want to come back and be on the show again.
Well, I think we covered some good subjects.
Yes, and as with the unknown, it's always going to be there. So there's always going to be a show. So, and it's a never ending, it's like Alice in Wonderland. There you go, Angie, a movie reference. Then going down the rabbit hole.
Yep.
Well, thank you all for tuning in tonight. I hope you all enjoyed this episode. And before we sign out, Angie, I know I have some links for you in the description. Where can people find you?
Future Life Today is my website, but they can find me on, Facebook is my Angie Dollar healer name because they act like Angie Dollar's fake on Facebook, but it's not. Angie Dollar is the name of my YouTube channel as well. So.
Okay, and Jim, the links you gave me are in there. Where else can people find you?
Yeah, if you could post a link to my Facebook, that would be the best one.
Okay, I'll make sure I have it in there, and if it's not in the description, I will add it to the description. And so thank you all for a truly wonderful evening delving into the unknown. And I am so grateful to know both of you. And I look forward to both of you being on the show again. And so with that, I'm going to say good night, good day, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Just make it a blessed day. Enjoy life. That's what we really need in this world.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.